Assalamu alaikum. أ.فاطمة is speaking. I hope you are in good health. Okay, our story today is called The Parted Window. It was written by Abrose Bierce. Yes, the author of this story, Abrose Bierce, was an American editorialist, journalist, short story writer, and satirist. Some of his most popular works include his short story An Occurrence at Old Greek Bridge and the satirical lexicon The Devil's Dictionary. The Parted Window by Ambrose Bierce was first published in the San Francisco Examiner on April 12, 1890. 1891. Bierce made some revisions before including it in Tales of Soldiers and Civilians, 1892. To briefly summarize this story, a man named Marlick lives alone in the wilderness in a house with a parted window. The narrator explains that the window was parted sometime after Marlick's unnamed wife died. The narrator goes on to describe the strange event that happened the night after Marlick prepared his wife's body for the grave. While Marlick watches over the dead body, a panther enters the cabin. Marlick attempts to shoot the unknown creature in the dark, after which he falls unconscious. Upon awakening that next morning, he discovers a piece of a panther's upper between the clenched teeth of his dead wife. Yeah. Abrose Bierce provides readers with a high-quality horror story, also known as The Parted Window. Bierce incorporates purposeful integration as well as a story plot twist in the end. This is what makes the story interesting to the readers. Elements such as irony and diction come together to make the mood of the story. Many readers may even be able to connect with the story personally. Mood is used as a tool to let a reader have a more sophisticated understanding of the story through symbolism. Yes. Okay, setting, okay, of the story of the parted window, short story. Setting means a time and place. When you tell, when you tell someone a story, what details do you always include? Just think, what details do you always include when you tell someone a story? Sorry. Yes. Most likely, you tell them when and where the story happened. The time and location of a story are aspects of the setting. Setting is vital to any story, and it allows the reader or listener to better picture what is happening. It can include physical description of a place, location, and information about the time of the story, such as a year or time of day. There are different levels of setting within a story. You can have the broad setting where the entire story takes place and additional information about the setting of each scene. You will also find that setting often ties directly into the plot of the story. One example of this is Abrose Bierce short story, The Boarded Window. Sittings in the boarded window, as a whole story are described explicitly by the narrator, which gives the reader an excellent mental picture of where the story takes place. The very first line of the story tells us, in 1830, only a few miles away from what is now the great city of Cincinnati, lay an immense and almost unbroken forest. This sentence, in red color, tells us the time period, location, and general description of the area where the story takes place. The narrator then goes on to tell us that the people in the area are transient and move along almost as quickly as they come. This contributes to the setting as well. If, for example, the location was the same, but the town was made up of a few people who never left and who all knew each other well, that would affect the setting of the story. Major themes in the story. Yes. This is an American hero story about a man who has an unusual experience while preparing to peer his wife. Major themes in the story are death, loss and grief, supernaturalism and bizarre magic realism, a literary or artistic genre where a story which is grounded in reality still manages to contain elements of the fantastical. One of the themes that emerge from this story is failure. The narrator describes the setting as an 1830 ghost town near Cincinnati that was sparsely settled by people of the frontier. Yes, in other words, the entire region is composed of failure by people who continue to move in search of something bigger and better that they never find. Moralk is no exception. His zeal of agriculture had burned with a falling flame. At the end of his life, Moralk is about 50 years old but looks closer to 70 because of the burden of life he carried. After Moralk's wife becomes ill and he thinks she has died, Moralk fails to properly prepare her body. Moralk's occasional failure to accomplish some simple and ordinary act filled him with astonishment. Moralk's failures led to their life on a farm that was too far away to get help when they needed it, mistaking his wife for dead and improperly preparing her for peril in a way that leads a panther to attack her and actually kill her. Yes, another theme from this story is grief. It's appeared that Moral loves, grief, It's apparent that Moral loves his wife because when she falls ill, he doesn't leave her side for 3 days as he tries to nurse her back to health, but falls. Once he believes she is dead, he is surprised that he didn't weep, surprised and a little ashamed. He thinks that perhaps the grief will come when she has been appeared and is no longer inside. Um, it becomes apparent that the real reason Marlik is not grieving is because his heart couldn't contain it all. His imagination rightly conceived it. The narrator comments on how differently grief is received by different people by comparing the grieving process to a funeral mark. For some, it is sharp and shrill, but for others, the low, grave, um, yes, that throb recurrent like the slow beating of a distant drum. Wallach ends okay up suffering grief for most of his life, but he questions himself when he doesn't immediately express his grief in the way that he always assumed grief and supposed okay to be expressed. Yes, and okay, common themes and a death, decaying, okay, tree stumps. The story itself takes place after the death of Booth, the main character, and his wife. His wife's death, the panther, dead animal skins. Also, isolation is another theme of this story. Middle of the forest, log cabin, in the woods, Moloch died alone by himself. No one in the era knew him, only his stories and his house. When the panther comes, he is in complete darkness and alone. Characters, okay, of this story. Yes. In Amber's okay, Bierce short story, the protagonist Marlik wakes up in the middle of the night to find that his wife's dead body has been moved from its resting place. Nothing seems to make sense, leaving it up to the readers, okay, to draw their own conclusion. So let's learn more about the characters in this short story. Yes, Morlek is the protagonist of this brief story. Morlek appears to have had adventurous spirit in his youth, but life's failure, including his inability to make it as a farmer and his wife's death, have taken their toll on him. He is one of the very few original settlers in the frontier near since yes, near Cincinnati, who didn't move on in hopes of finding a better life. He lives alone in a log house in the forest and survives by selling the skins of the animals he hunts. The most significant event in his life is the death of his wife, whom he tries for 3 days to nurse back to health, but then attempts to prepare her for peril on his own. In performance of this and a sacred duty, he blundered now and again, did certain things incorrectly, and others which he did correctly were done over and over. It is unclear if preparations include yes, okay, or merely physical. Yes, Moloch is distributed that his grief doesn't come immediately or in a way that he considers conventional, but he does experience grief in a deep way for the reminder of his life. When he walks from a dream and finds his wife missing, he is terrified and shoots at whatever is in his house. Morlock's wife appears to have been a good match for him, as she is described a young woman in always worthy of his honest devotion, who shared the dangers and privations of his lot with a willing spirit and light heart. There is no known record for her name or for charms of mind and person, as there doesn't appear to be anyone in the town that still remembers her. The narrator makes assumptions about their affection for each other and happiness together. When she becomes ill, Marlik never leaves her side for 30 days as the attempt to nurse her back to health. Once he believes she is dead, he prepares her for burial. However, during the night, it appears that Panther sneaks into her room and begins to drag her off. This is highly unusual since panthers don't inhabit that area. After Morlock scares the panther away, he discovers that his wife's clothing was yes, his wife's clothing was deranged. The long hair is disordered. The limbs lay anyhow. Fresh blood comes from her throat, and she has a piece of the panther's ear in her teeth. There is much speculation over whether Marlock's wife was really. Yes, there is okay. There is much speculation over whether Moloch's wife was really dead or in reincarnated through preparation for burial. Either way, she appears to be a fighter. So, characters in this story, yes, a character, okay, in general, a character type is the way you categorize a character. Some of his character traits are alone and regretful because he is left alone after the death of his wife and is regretful about the fact that he won't let her go and feels responsible for her death. Then convinced that she was dead, Morlick had sense enough to remember that the dead must be prepared for peril. In performance of his sacred duty, he blundered now and again. Yes. Then so the protagonist of this story is Marlick. Yes. Elements of the story. In the story, Bierce incorporates purposeful integration as well as a story plot twist in the end. This is what makes the story interesting to the readers. Elements such as irony and diction come together to make the mood of the story. Many readers may even be able to connect with the story personally. Mood is used as a tool to let the reader have a more sophisticated understanding of the story through symbolism. Yes. So, yes, elements of the story. Here we discuss the irony, tune of the story, the irony, okay, in the story, mood, okay, of the story. Irony is often what makes a story compelling and memorable. Ambrose Bierce brings irony to another level, which makes the reader do more than a double take. Yes. Amber's Amber's Bierce short fiction was just irony in the tricks, yes, trick endings, the author mentioned to the trick endings, in this story, in this short story. So, Amber's Pierce short fiction was known for its trick endings, and this element of his writing style was often criticized by his contemporaries. However, a trick ending go, Pierce used a specific literary element that has been influential for authors and how stories are told. In the boarded window, the element is situational irony when the outcome is different than what is expected for both the audience and the characters. The irony erupts at the end of the story when the reader learns the true fate of Marlik's wife. Marlik's um, a frontier yes, yes, a frontiersman living with his wife in the wild, can do little to save her when she gets sick, and even less when a mountain lion attempts to steal her body. Some events of the story play into the ending, which also serve as yes, forms of foreshadowing. Yes, or an author hints to future events. In this case, the details and that are sometimes overlooked have a much bigger impact in the story than previously thought. Yes, not tears. Despite trying to nurse his wife back to health, she dies after 3 days. Grief stricken, Marlik sets off to prepare his wife's body for burial. It's during this time that Marlik realizes that hasn't cried, nor in he able to. He wonders what is wrong, and why he can't summon someone and he can't summon the tears to appropriately grieve his dead wife. In describing this, Pierce writes, yes, he was surprised too that he didn't weep, surprised and a little ashamed. Surely it is unkind not to weep and for the dead. Perhaps somewhere deep down, Malik knew his wife wasn't dead, which is why he couldn't cry. The emphasis on his inability to shed some tears for his dead wife make it a voice point of foreshadowing. Yes. Yes, also about the tune of this story. Just and to mention for the tune. What do you mean by tune? Of the story. When you tell someone a story, you typically use a specific words to let them know how you feel. Yes, how you feel about another subject, even if you aren't doing it consciously. For example, words like hilarious, let your listener know that you thought something was funny. The attitude of a speaker towards the subject of a story is the tone. This is the meaning of tune or a definition of tune. In non-fiction literature, tune represents the attitude of the writer. In fiction, it represents the attitude of the narrator, just as you do with your personal stories. An author will use specific word choices to let the reader know their attitude and set the tone. One story where we can see this is in Ambrose Bierce, Bierce's short story, The Boarded Window. Yes. Um, yes, narrator, the boarded windows, the boarded window is told through a first person narrator who is not personally related to the main conflict in any way. having this outside narrator allows for a very specific tone to be set. The narrator is our storyteller, and he is able to create a tone of suspense in a way that wouldn't be possible if Moralik, the main character, was the narrator. Yes, the comprehensive tone in the boarded window is one of mystery and suspense. The narrator tells us, in the opening section, I fancy there are a few persons living today who ever knew the secret of that window, but I'm one, as you shall see. Yes, the author he established that the story is a secret he knows, but most others don't. By doing so, he creates an air of mystery surrounding the window. He later tells us of Malik's wife, who had preceded him by so many years, and that local tradition had returned hardly a hint of his existence. Once again, yes, diction or the choice and use of words and phrases in speech or writing in this story, his diction or choice of words and decision to include this information about the mystery surrounding the characters in the story show us in his attitude toward the subject and set the tone. The narrator views and it is a story of mystery and suspense and shows us this by establishing that much of what he is going to tell us in speculation, not documented fact. Yes, the suspense created by the narrator culminates in the climax of the story when a wild animal breaks into Marlik's house and attacks his wife. He presumed she was dead from fever, but it turned out she wasn't until the animal killed her. This climax is all the more intense because of the building provided by the tone of the story. The tone of suspense leads the reader to understand that something else is going on and that the main event of the story hasn't yet happened. A heartbreak. There are be multiple tones used in any piece of writing, and that is the case with the boarded window. In addition to the air of mystery given to the whole story, yes, we also see the narrator's attitude toward Malik's grief at his wife's presumed passing. This lends the story a tone of sadness and heartbreak. After Malik believes she has died from fever, the narrator states that Malik was stunned to the point that he couldn't accept what happened, even was here prepared here for a burial. Yes. Um, yes, also about yes point of view, yes, every story, no matter how long or short, is told from a certain point of view or perspective. When you tell personal stories to your friends, you most likely use first person. On the other hand, if you told a story about one of your friends, you might use third person. First person point of view means the story is told from the speaker's perspective, and it makes use use of first person pronouns like I and we. One example of a text that uses first person is the boarded window by Ambrose Bierce. By contrast, third person is told without the use of I. Instead, it uses names and third person pronouns such as he, she, and they. There is also a second person point of view which uses you, but it is far less common in literature. Yes, within third person, there are two possible points. Yes. Yes, within third person, there are two visible points of view an author might use. The first, okay, is in a third person limited. This is when the piece, okay, is third person, but you only see the thoughts of a single character. The perspective is limited to what that person sees, hears, and thinks. And instead of this, an author might use third person omniscient. Okay, in this point of view, you can see the thoughts, okay, and actions of multiple characters. Okay, in the boarded window, okay, story. Yes, okay, the author use of the first person point of view. We can see this through the use of I at multiple points, especially in the beginning of the story. One example, okay, in the book, and reads, I fancy, and there are a few persons living today. Okay, etc. Okay, but I'm okay too, but I'm one as you shall see. Yes. What is interesting about the perspective of this short story is that the narrator is never named. The entire focus, okay, of the story is on Marlik, and the only information we are really given about the narrator is how he supposedly knows the story about Marlik. We are told that these particulars I learned from my grandfather, from whom also I got, sorry, the man's story when I was a lad. Yes, okay, a different perspective. By section three of the story, we have almost lost a sense of the narrator completely. There are still occasional uses of I and we, but for the most part, the story is told from Morlick's perspective or third person limited point of view. There are pieces of information includes okay in the story that the narrator, as established earlier, would really have no way of knowing. This includes Morlick's private thoughts and specific events that happened at night in Morlick's cabin with no outsider present. For example, we are told, okay, that Morlick was surprised too, that he did, okay, that he didn't weep, surprised and a little ashamed. We also learned that Morlick didn't know, yes, he was, okay, so hard struck that knowledge would come later and never go. These sentences, okay, give insight to Morlock's private thoughts and feelings, which our first person narrator would have no way of knowing. This makes much of the story feel as if it were third person limited rather than first person. Yes. Irony, situational irony, okay, in this story, the boarded window, for example, okay, the ribbon, okay, with which he had, uh, yes, bound, the wrist was broken, the hands, okay, were tightly clenched between the teeth was a fragment of the animal's ear. Yes, this means that Marlick's wife put up a fight with the panther, also meaning that she regained consciousness. This is a situational irony because we all expected Marlick's wife to be dead in the first place. We also expected the blood to be dried, not fresh. Dramatic irony, okay, of this situation, the reader, okay, could probably assume that after Malik notices the panther and shots his gun in paragraphs 11 and 12, that some kind of a strange result would occur. We know this is okay, this, but unconscious Malik doesn't. After Malik wakes up, he was he was appalled by the sight of his dead wife. In paragraph, okay, one sentence two to four, phrases such as impelled by some mysterious impulse of their nature, and he lived alone in a house of logs surrounded on all sides by the great forest of whose gloom and silence. Lets the reader, forbid what kind of a story this will be, using words like forsaken and indigenous also adds a negative connotation and a sense of negativity and fullness. While reading paragraph 12, sentence 2, new emotions, such as suspense and apprehension washed, over me. When Orlick fired off his gun, there was the possibility that the bolt, might not hit, its target. This added a drama to the story. Also, in paragraph 7, the reader might find the entire paragraph to be strange. Morlock tells himself when he can't cry of his dead wife. Normal people cry when they feel emotions such as empathy or when they suffer emotionally. Uh, though I have never been through any kind of a tragedy, like this, one of my close friends has, though he always told himself that he wouldn't cry for the passing of his grandfather, that he would be strong. We realized, that crying doesn't mean that you are weak, but just you are human. Malik reacts the way does he does because he has never encountered this kind of grief before. Yes, this section of paragraph, in 1830, only a few miles away from they abandoned all and push, further westward. Uh, Mood composition, the use of irony and diction help build the mood of the story, while symbolism gives the author a chance to look back and have a deeper understanding of why the author uses diction, irony, and mood. For example, a dramatic irony in paragraph 11 and 12 provided the reader with suspense and apprehension. The irony in paragraph 12 leaves the reader with the cliffhanger, maximizing their need and curiosity for what is going to happen next. The use of diction in the boarded window, words given of more heavy and negative connotation. For example, the word indigence, indigence, which means seriously impoverished, could easily have just been poor or indeed or in need, sorry, or in need. But Ambrose Bierce uses the word indigence on purpose. Bierce, does this to let, the reader enjoy the darkness, of the story, to set up the mood, step by step. After the mood is set, the reader might think back and have a more thorough comprehension of the story by acknowledging the connection between the window and the protagonist of the story. More like symbols, the boarded window. The boarded window represents isolation and refusal to allow the traumatic event to ever happen again, even though it likely wouldn't. Yes, the panther symbolizes a true death coming to take his wife away for good instead of seemingly being prepared for death and more like thinking she was dead. Summary. Uh, the summary of this story is that a man will blame himself for the pain and mistakes that come upon him. He will shut himself away from the outside world and hold his grief, knowing that he is a failure. He won't let go of the death of his wife and believes that he is the one to blame for his death. Yes, the relevance to present day of this story, as guilt played a strong role, and the undertone that Morlock, blamed himself for his wife's death. People still blame themselves for things that aren't necessarily their fault and let their whole lives be consumed by their guilt and feel they are responsible for a bad situation?